Okay, well, this section talks of Catechism of the Catholic Church, discusses how Christ fulfilled the law. Now, I would like to explain to you what I believe the Catholic Church means by fulfilling. Um, when a young man or a young woman goes into medical school, they grow through, they work very hard. They if they graduate, they have fulfilled the requirements in order to get their medical license. So when they move from, the graduation ceremony into their own practice, have they abolished all the things they learned? No. They have fulfilled them. If they abolished their medical schooling, that would be absolutely terrible. They wouldn't want to do that. However, you no longer have to stay in school, and you also then can take upon you what you have learned in medical school, and you can use it in any way you want to. You can rise above it and learn from it, but you don't have to necessarily use every single thing, or it is no longer your master. You are the master. So when Christ fulfills the law, that's what I think the Catholic Church is meaning. And we will start reading from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, section 577. And should be of interest to Adventists because it is talking about the fulfillment of the law. All right. At the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus issued a solemn warning in which he presented God's law given on Mount Sinai during the first covenant in light of the grace of the new covenant. Do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I've come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of the letter will pass away from the law until it is all accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Now, Jesus was bringing the kingdom of heaven. And so when this was fulfilled was at the cross. Okay, so 578. Jesus, Israel's Messiah, and therefore the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, was to fulfill the law by keeping it in its all-embracing detail, according to his own words, down to the least of these commandments. He is, in fact, the only one who could keep it perfectly. On their own admission, the Jews were never able to observe the law in its entirety without violating the least of its precepts. This calls whoever keeps the law, the whole law, but fails in one point, has become guilty of all of it. 579. The principle of integral observance of the law, not only in letter but in spirit, was dear to the Pharisees. By giving Israel this principle, they had led many Jews of Jesus' time to an extreme religious zeal. This zeal, were it not to lapse into hypocritical casuistry, could only prepare the people for the unprecedented intervention of God through the perfect fulfillment of the law by the only righteous one in place of all sinners. 580. The perfect fulfillment of the law could be the work of none but the divine legislator, born subject to the law in the person of the Son. In Jesus, the law no longer appears engraved on tables of stone. Let's read that again. Born subject to the law in the person of the Son. In Jesus, The law no longer appears engraved on tables of stone, but upon the heart of the servant who becomes a covenant to the people, because he will faithfully bring forth justice. Now, think about what the Catechism just said. It said the law was no longer engraved on tablets of stone, but on the heart of the servant who becomes a covenant to the people. It was now engraved upon Christ's heart because he will faithfully bring forth justice. Jesus fulfills the law to the point of taking upon himself. We've got to change the page. Okay, let's get that started again. Jesus fulfills the law to the point of taking upon himself the curse of the law incurred by those who do not abide by the things written in the book of the law and do them. For his death took place to redeem them from the transgressions under the first covenant. That is how the early church saw Jesus and the law. He fulfilled it. Okay, 581. The Jewish people and their spiritual leaders viewed Jesus as a rabbi. He often argued within the framework of a rabbinical interpretation of the law. Yet Jesus could not help but offend the teachers of the law, for he was not content to propose his interpretation alongside theirs. There was no tolerance of everybody's interpretation of the law, but taught the people as one who had authority and not as their scribes. In Jesus, the same word of God that had resounded on Mount Sinai to give the written law of Moses, to Moses, made itself heard anew on the Mount of Beatitudes. Jesus did not abolish the law, but fulfilled it by giving it its ultimate interpretation in a divine way. You have heard that it was said to the men of old, Jesus said, but I say to you, he's taking on the authority right there. You've heard the law that was given to Moses, but now a new law is coming. But I say to you, with this same divine authority, he disavowed certain human traditions of the Pharisees that were making void the word of God. 582. Going even further, Jesus perfects the dietary law, so important to the Jewish daily life, by revealing its pedagogical meaning through a divine interpretation. Whatever goes into a man from outside cannot defile him. Thus, he declared all foods clean. What comes out of a man is what defiles him. Far from within, out of the heart of man comes evil thoughts. In presenting with divine authority the definitive interpretation of the law, Jesus found himself confronted by certain teachers of the law who did not accept his interpretation of the law, guaranteed though it was by the divine signs that accompanied it. This was the case especially with the Sabbath laws. For he recalls often with rabbinical arguments that the Sabbath rest is not violated by serving God and neighbor, which his own healings did. Okay, so if you would like to go in and read more, especially about that, I would encourage you to go to the Catechism and read it, and kind of put aside all your uh, uh, conditions or presuppositions about what Catholics mean. Why don't you just read the surrounding paragraphs and really get a concept of what Catholics mean by what they teach? And I think you'll find out. It's pretty wonderful. Anyway, God bless you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And next, we're going to do a short one on the atonement. God bless.